So I'd like to just say that I have a great deal of confidence that American power, American respect in the world will be maintained. And I'd like to sum up not just with our military, because I do believe that our military will maintain the edge and will be a leader in the world. But I do think we have to continue to invest in our diplomacy and our foreign aid programs as well. I'm very proud of the work that we do in lifting up people throughout the world when it comes to diseases, through the Global Fund, through other programs that fund tuberculosis, malaria, etc. I'm very proud of the work that we do in our villages everywhere throughout the world, again, to help alleviate poverty. And our foreign aid budget and our diplomacy budget, along with our military budget, must continue to reflect the tremendous needs internationally, because that is the responsibility of a world power, not just to be strong militarily, but to make sure that we are capable of facing the many challenges to help people fulfill their dreams, help people reach for the stars. That's the image of the United States of America that I want to continue to project.
Thank you, and thank you for the plug for Singapore's textbooks. Please go and buy one now. Senator Corker, please.
Well, thank you. A century's a long time, and you were talking about relative American power. The priest on the front row might say that, comparisons are odious. We have a term in our country that describes American exceptionalism, and do I believe that America will demonstrate continued exceptionalism in the world over this next century? Absolutely. I do. Your question, your comment regarding the third item, and that is where we are politically, no doubt is affecting us in the short term. I mean, we as a country are faced with the same challenges that so many Western democracies are facing right now, and that is we've had politicians on both sides of the aisle for decades that have made commitments to citizens that cannot be honored. And they're difficult decisions that we know reforms have to be made. Europe is facing that. Our country right now is somewhat paralyzed over those issues because of the partisanship that you talked about a minute ago, which, by the way, both sides very much are at fault. It is my belief that, I know that you read the publications from the outside and you read about sort of the negative things. I see a centrist group forming in both the House and the Senate to deal with these issues that we have in our country, the tax reform elements that have to take place, the entitlement reform elements that have to take place, the long-term deficit issues that have to take place. And before we'll be able to be the country that we all want to be around the world, those are going to have to be dealt with, because what's happening internal to our country is a lot of nativist feelings are coming out. People want us to sort of step back from the involvement that we have in the world because of the issues that we have at home. So I think the most important thing in the short term for us is to get our balance sheet in order. I think we will get our balance sheet in order personally over the next 2 to 3 years. I wish we could get it together this year. I don't think that's going to happen for a lot of reasons, but I do believe regardless of who is elected president, we're going to deal with those issues over the next 2 to 3 years. On the military side, I would say that, look, I don't think there's any question that the United States of America will project itself around the world, but there has to be a rebalancing that does take place. I mean, you look at where we are with NATO right now, and so many of the countries there are countries there honoring their commitments. But NATO was built on the fact that each country was going to commit a certain portion of their gross domestic product to NATO. And in many ways, our country has become the provider of protection, and many countries have been the consumers of protective services. And so that has to rebalance. But I absolutely believe this will be a century where America demonstrates exceptionalism. There's no doubt there will be economies that just due to demographics, are going to be different relative to ours. You look at countries with 1 billion people that are growing rapidly, that's going to change. But I think we will be an economic powerhouse. We will lead on democracy efforts. We will lead in being a force for good in this world. And the quicker that we can deal with our balance sheet issues, the more energetic in the near future that will be.
Dr. Froman?
Well, first of all, let me...
quick first comment, and then we will move on. Yeah, go
Great.
ahead.
First, let me thank you for having me on the panel. And you have really 3 of the most effective and most internationalist legislators in our country here who've done great things on foreign assistance, on New START, on a whole range of intelligence and defense issues. So this really is, I think, a very good group to talk to that. Let me just say a few things. One, when President Obama came into office, he set out as his top priority to restore America's reputation and to strengthen its influence around the world. And that had many parts to it. One was to strengthen the alliances, and I think we can say right now our alliances, both in Europe and in Asia, have never been stronger. And I point to Korea, Japan, Australia, where we are seeing real strength in those alliances, as well as the NATO actions. 2, that it was critically important to get the great power relationships right. That if you don't have Russia and China in a good place in your relationships, it's very hard to get anything else done. And that's what the restart was about, that's what engagement with China was about, and that's what allowed us, I think, to work very collaboratively, including through the UN Security Council, on issues like Iran and North Korea, and to build a coalition globally to address those issues. Third, there was a desire to do a strategic rebalancing. For obvious reasons, there had been a great focus on Iraq and Afghanistan previously, and there was a desire to re-engage with Asia, which we see as the fastest growing region for our economic potential, but also a region that's incredibly important to us strategically. Fourth, we set out to reform elements of the international architecture, precisely because having a rules-based system that reflects our values as well as our interests is our most effective way to exert influence over the long run. And things like the creation of the G20 or the institutionalization of it as the premier forum for international economic cooperation, or the President's engagement with the East Asia Summit are just 2 examples of how we've tried to build, or the Trans-Pacific Partnership, examples of how we've tried to build rules-based architecture to reflect the new realities of the global system. And finally, none of this could be done without solving our economic problems at home. And that had to be dealt with proactively and forthrightly in the midst of the crisis in 2009, through very difficult political steps like TARP and recapitalizing the banks and things that were not popular politically, but also to promote growth and to commit to rebalancing our fiscal situation, consolidating our fiscal consolidation, our situation over the medium term. And let me just conclude with that, because I think what's remarkable about what you've heard so far is how much convergence there really is between Republicans and Democrats, both on the nature of American power, the importance of projecting it going forward, and the importance of dealing with problems like the balance sheet that Senator Corker referred to. There is no disagreement between Republicans and Democrats on the importance of doing that. We may have differences on exactly the right balance between taxes and spending, but there's no disagreement that that's what we must do as a nation, and I share his optimism that we will get there.
Wonderful. Now, we have about 10 minutes in a panel discussion before we come to you on the floor. And so far, I've noticed everybody's been very good and restrained. Maybe I will make the discussion a bit more difficult by posing a very difficult question. And, we're talking